Hello, everyone, and welcome to Where Are All the Women? How are you doing, Mary Lou?
I'm great in a lot of ways and sad in other ways. Just got back from 2 weeks in Ireland, which was amazing. But my beloved dog died while we were there. So kind of all over the place.
It's so hard having doggies because they're the best things in the whole world, but then we have to go through such sadness inevitably.
Right. I still have my little dog Foxy, so that's good.
Thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
How was Ireland?
Oh, it was amazing. It was just incredible in so many ways. We should go sometime.
I know. I want to try to go this year somehow. I have like high hopes of going to Europe this summer because you have to escape from Sayulita at least for a little bit over the summer / rainy season because otherwise it's just too much. And there's so many of the businesses and restaurants and bars shut down like in either July or August or September or October or sometimes even for 2 or 3 months during this time because it's just so slow that it's not worth it to keep the business open and keep paying employees and so on and so forth. So it's not only that it's like extremely hot and humid and you're sweating constantly, and that then there's storms and there's power outages, so you lose AC and internet and everything else, but it also gets really, there's not a lot to do because a lot of people leave and a lot of things shut down. And there's parts of it that are nice also because it's, peaceful and it gets really green and lush because of all the rain and, the touristas aren't around. But then it's also, you have to like escape for a little bit. And in past years, well, I stayed through the whole summer the first year I was here in 2021. And then the 2 summers after that, or were there 3 summers? I can't remember, 2, I think. Last year I went to BC for 2 months, and that was way too much. I was miserable. I don't want to be back in Canada for that long, and I have friends who are European. I have some friends who are Italian and Irish, actually, and going back to just Spain or Italy or whatever. So I sort of have fantasies of spending, I don't know, a couple weeks in Europe or something. So maybe I could do Ireland. I think I might try to do Italy.
Everything's fairly close together over there.
Yeah, I feel like once you're there, the flights aren't more expensive than flying to Canada because Canadian Airlines are so ridiculous. It's so expensive to fly to Vancouver. I think last time I had to fly to Vancouver in November or something to get my dog because you're not allowed to fly with 2 dogs anymore. So I had to leave one there and go back for her. So I had to do an entire extra flight for nothing, for no reason, no reason at all. 2 little dogs, nope. And it cost me like $1,000 just to fly to Vancouver, and I was like, "This is ridiculous! I don't even want to go to Vancouver. $1,000,
But you could fly with 1 giant dog, but not 2 little dogs.
2 little tiny dogs that just sleep the whole time in a bag that nobody even notices.
Right, and
they don't do anything. They just sleep in their bags.
The total volume of dogs is smaller than a medium dog.
Yeah, exactly. The total volume of my dogs is like 20 pounds.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's like, so the flights aren't actually like that much more expensive than going to Canada. And I have friends there. So, it's anyway, I haven't spent a ton of time in Europe. The only times I've been to Europe are for work. I mean, that's most of my traveling has been for work. So I've been to like the UK and I've been to Scotland. I've been to Budapest. I've been to, where else? Not, anyway, blah, 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 blah. Maybe Ireland finally.
I love Ireland. I just kept thinking the whole time how ironic it is that my ancestors fled there because they were starving, and I was there eating the best food of my life and having such a good time. It feels like a nice full circle.
I just started reading How the Irish Saved Civilization, actually, this week.
That's a great book.
Yeah. It's incredible to me how much the Irish were oppressed and how much the Irish suffered and what they went through to, achieve what they have in America and, in general. But, and it's just completely forgotten. The entire narrative around oppression has been completely dominated by color, by
exactly.
race. And it's not how things have gone down at all. And the Irish are completely ignored, and they've, the Irish have been, again, so successful in overcoming, the worst oppression and hardship. And, of course, lots of other countries or cultures, I should say, lots of other cultures have experienced similar throughout history. But it's just people are so simplistic about things like slavery and oppression and injustice and suffering,
and completely ignoring the massive amount of slavery currently happening in our era. Most
in the Congo
is not being perpetrated by white people on people of color. It's there's so much slavery happening in the Middle East. There's so much slavery happening in Asia. There's so much slavery happening in Africa.
Well, cobalt is still mined essentially via slave labor to produce lithium batteries for people's EVs and for, wind turbines and all this, like saving the environment garbage that doesn't actually save the environment so that rich people don't have to feel guilty, I suppose, or feel like they're doing something good for the world by buying more stuff.
And then all of the Filipino women in Dubai and the United Arab Emirates who were essentially being held in slavery as domestic workers and who have no rights and who are raped by men there and then are jailed for being raped and jailed for being pregnant and deliver their babies in prisons in Dubai, and then their children don't have any documentation, and these women can't get out of the country. Their children are non-persons. There's a lot of current slavery that doesn't fit the narrative that white people invented slavery and only white people have perpetrated slavery.
Well, and then there's human trafficking. There's sex trafficking that is rampant around the globe.
Yes,
in almost all countries. United States too, of course. I mean, everywhere, Europe, Middle East,
everywhere,
and so forth. Which is almost completely ignored by progressives and the left.
Right, because it's sex work and it's noble.
Sex work is work. Some ladies just like it. Some ladies love having sex with myriads or hundreds and thousands of strange men who hate them.
Yeah, what did you think about the Lily Philips interview?
Okay, so I don't know if anyone watching listened to the Lily Philips interview on trigonometry. I'm glad that they did that interview. I think you might have a different perspective, but I thought that they did a very good job, actually. I mean, it was very frustrating to listen to because she's in such denial and she's also kind of stupid and she's just not able to think anything through at all. Like, she's got her little talking points given to her by third wave feminism, that are essentially, I wish people wouldn't be so judgmental. And, people just think this is controversial because sex is controversial, which is bullshit. Sex isn't really that controversial. We've all been having sex for a very long. Like, she behaves as though the idea of a woman liking sex, which I don't think she does like sex. I don't think she has any idea what enjoyable sex feels like. But, she behaves as though the controversy surrounding her having sex with 100 men, having sex, I don't even want to call it being penetrated by 100 men on camera for her OnlyFans channel, is just about the fact that, people just really can't wrap their heads around the fact that some women just love having sex. And it's like, dude, we can all wrap our heads around the fact that some women love having sex. Like, most people love having sex. Sex is great.
I know.
That's not controversial at all.
Right.
Like, the only reason you would think that's controversial is, I think, because you actually don't have enjoyable, really good sex. Otherwise, you would understand how great sex is and that everybody enjoys sex for that reason. Like it's one of the great miracles of the universe, I think, and of human life.
I agree. I think that any woman who truly enjoys having sex, who's having satisfying sex, would not be satisfied or in any way interested in just lying back and being penetrated by 100 guys in a day. Like that's not someone who enjoys sex. Like a woman who really likes having great sex, why would she tolerate that no matter how much money she's getting paid?
It's just impossible that that's physically enjoyable for a woman because of how our bodies are built, because of how vaginas function, you know, like it would be painful and uncomfortable to say the least, if not, you know, physically damaging. And I'm sure that it was, you know, you would inevitably, I think, end up with at least tears in your skin and things like that, or, you know, you'd be rubbed raw. Sorry, I'm not trying to be like too vulgar.
No, here, it's true. I mean, all of it is disgusting. I think of like the just the smell of the guys like being disgusting. You know, just it's so gross. And I think it's normal to be repulsed by that. It's not it's a horrifying thing to think about.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I think that it was just, it was very frustrating to listen to her kind of refuse to answer Frances's and Constantine's questions, because they were trying to dig deeper and they were trying to get her to think this through a little more, both in the short and the long term. You know, like I remember at some point, I think they asked, or she may have actually brought up the fact that she wants to get married and have kids someday.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think Constantine asks her, you know, well, what are you worried about what your kids are going to think about what you've done? And her response was to say, you know, well, hopefully by then we've gotten to a point where we're less judgmental as a society. And, you know, I'll teach them, you know, not to be judgmental and that sex isn't a shameful thing. And it's like, dude, that's not how this works. Like, you know, you can, has always been one of the most maddening things about third wave feminism that, you know, like I've written about for a long time, and you and I and others have talked about, you know, the few feminists who didn't buy into that shit, like, which is that, you know, you can rail on about slut shaming all you want, but that's never going to make prostitution or pornography not degrading or abusive or harmful or exploitative. Like, you can't force people to see this in the way that you want them to see it, because that's not what the reality is. And the fact that we have like an inherent sense of disgust around these things, you know, there are reasons for that, and it's a good thing. And, you know, whether the reasons are rational or not doesn't really matter. Like, it's never going to be viewed as a good thing for a woman to be penetrated by 100 men in one day. It's because, you know, and you can talk about the reasons all you want, or you can say, oh, well, you shouldn't shame her. And it's like, okay, well, then, I mean, I haven't shamed her per se. Like, I had more of a, you know, I don't respect her or respect what she's done. That's for sure. I think she's ruining her life. But, and I think she's selling OnlyFans and she's selling pornography to young women in a way that's really disgusting and harmful and dangerous and dishonest, but for her own profit, I suppose, but and her own psyche, so that she doesn't have to tell herself the truth about what's going on. But you know, I was like, what kind of horrific, sociopathic, psychopathic, disgusting man would do that to a girl?
I know.
Which, yeah, like no good man would do that. And Francis said that in the interview. You know, he says that he ended up judging the guys more than he ended up judging her. I mean, I think many of us felt sorry for her. And he said he found himself thinking, you know, like, what type of guy would do this? And then asked, was there a commonality between these guys? Which I understood what he meant and what he was asking. And her response was so weird, because what she said was, I don't know why the media kept painting this like it was all black and Muslim men. And I was like, no, I never saw anybody do that.
Well,
like, why would you jump to that conclusion? It's so
the documentary I watched was primarily white guys lining up, but it's true. Like, what kind of man waits in line for up to hours to stick his dick in a woman for a couple of minutes?
Who doesn't like
camera,
him?
who doesn't like him?
Who isn't going to enjoy it?
Mm-hmm. And he's probably not going to enjoy it very much. Like, it's just like,
no.
It's a couple moments. It's so crazy the way she was in the interview when she was pretending something different had happened that day than what we all watched in the documentary, right? Like she was acting like it was just having sex with 100 guys and that it was fine and everything was great. And she just wanted to do that because it's her kink. We watched that documentary. Right. We saw her grimacing because her eyes were burning because these guys have been coming in her face, even though she said she asked them not to do that. And they kept doing that. We watched the cameramen gagging because of how disgusting the room smelled. And then we watched her break down, shaking and crying after the day was over. We saw all of that. And she, how did she write it off? It was like, it was a long work day and she was hungry and tired.
Like any other job where it was just a work day and, you're tired. Or maybe it was stressful. There was things that were stressful about it, but it had nothing to do with the experience being bad. The experience was fine and it was fun. And then after that, she just went about her life like normal, which I'm sure she did because she's clearly totally disconnected and is, not able and or willing to think about all that's being done to her in her so far young life.
Yeah, she's only 23.
It was interesting to me too, because she said, I've heard these talking points from porn stars for many years now, so it wasn't really anything new. She probably doesn't realize what a cliche she sounds like in terms of what porn stars say in order to pretend that they're okay with what they're doing and that it's no big deal. But she said, why wouldn't I just monetize what I'm already enjoying doing in my private life? And I was like, I don't buy, who knows, but I don't buy that you're having sex in your private life at all. Like I've talked to a lot of women in porn and prostitution who say that they completely lost all interest in having sex in their regular lives because they were so turned off by men and sex as a result of what was happening to them in prostitution and pornography. But also I think sort of inevitably, if you're disconnecting from sex and your sexuality in the way that you have to in order to do these kinds of acts and to avoid processing being verbally abused and often physically abused during sex, how would you shift back to connecting with somebody that you love or care about and opening up and desiring sex when you have to kind of turn off like that, and when you've trained yourself to have to turn off in the way that you have to turn off during prostitution? And if she is saying that she's engaging in these kinds of similar sex acts in her real life, first of all, I think that's in the past, not the present. Again, I just don't buy that she's having a regular or enjoyable sex life in her personal life. That's surely part of her trauma. Like I'm just sure that at some point she had, because I think she even says this, she had some kind of like gangbang, or maybe she was obviously engaging in porny or pornographic sex prior to doing this in porn, which was probably a traumatic experience, and she just kind of reconfigured that in her head as her own fetish and kink, and actually she's into it, and now she's just going to make money off of it because why not get paid for something that I love to do? Which never makes sense when it comes to sex. Like people always make those arguments too, that they're like, some women just love sex, so why shouldn't they get paid for it? And it's like, no, because anybody who loves sex is just going to have sex. Like if I really want to have sex with the guy because I'm turned on by him and I'm attracted to him, into him, whatever, then obviously you're going to have sex with him because you want to. You're not going to make him pay you to do it. Like, why would you do that?
it was really, it was just such a gross interview to listen to. She seems so naive. She's only 23. That's really young. And I have to admit that, I used to be pro prostitution. I got completely brainwashed in college. I am a sexual abuse survivor and was really hypersexual as a result of that. And could see that perspective of like, why not have women get paid? I never engaged in the sex industry, but I would argue for the legalization of prostitution. I went to a college where they brought Susie Bright to campus to propagandize us about the wonders of sex work and how empowering it was for women.
Feminist pornography.
Mm-hmm. And I was really into Annie Sprinkle. I thought she was super cool. I thought that what she was saying about how great it was to be an exhibitionist and to have sex with strangers, and how she actually loved all the men that she was with, and she was having such a good time. I fell for it really hard, and I'm embarrassed. I'm kind of disgusted that happened to me. But because of that, I have compassion for people who are still in that mindset. And I think it's an attractive lie to women who are abuse survivors and have become hypersexual from childhood abuse, which I think is a fairly big subset of the population.
Yeah.
And that's it's a recruiting tool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a very attractive narrative in general for men and for women, because men can ease their guilt around watching porn and paying for sex because they've been handed this narrative by third wave feminism that says, and, by the porn industry as well. But I do, it was really, I think was third wave feminism that popularized and normalized those kinds of narratives and mantras like sex work is work, regardless of whether or not that came directly for the sex industry. Third wave feminism embraced it and repackaged it as something that was really empowering for women, and then promoted that for many, many years. But, it's an attractive narrative because I remember wanting to believe these things. I remember wanting to be okay with strip clubs and pornography. And I remember wanting to think that feminist pornography could be a thing, and that, maybe there were prostituted women who weren't victims but were making an empowered choice, yada, yada, yada. But it just never felt right to me. So it just never really worked on me. And then I just, I discovered Andrew Dworkin and Germaine Greer, and actually I read Ariel Levy's book, Female Chauvinist Pigs. And
that was a big eye opener for me.
Yeah, me too. When I was young, and I discovered sort of more radical feminist second wave approaches to seeing the sex industry that made sense to me right away. So I never got into promoting those narratives, luckily. But yeah, I wanted to. That's the narrative that I wanted to be true, because it's so much more comforting.
Yeah. It is comforting.
The reality is gross and awful.
Yeah, right. It was being pushed pretty hard in the early 90s. There was so much, I guess that was like the crest of third wave feminism coming through, and the universities, everything changing. Like I said, I'm ashamed. I feel really pretty gross that I fell for it, but it gives me compassion. And I think I was that age. I was 23. I'm listening to Lily Philips. I could have never done that. Like, I had too many body image issues. Thankfully, that probably kept me out of that industry. Because as a broke single mom, I lived in this apartment complex where I was one of the only women not working not prostituting. And I just couldn't do it. I just literally couldn't do it because of my, my stuff. I worked as a phone psychic instead.
That sounds fun.
Yeah. It didn't pay quite as well. But I'm way less traumatized by it.
Yeah, I bet.
I sold weed and worked as a cell phone psychic. We're all the single moms in my apartment complex. We're all working in massage parlors or stripping or working at peep shows. And they were, coming home and drinking themselves into oblivion and using coke and just doing, trying to numb it all they'd have these piles of money that just be gone by the time they hit their next weekend. Like none of the money they were making was sticking around because they needed to numb out so badly.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to be the cycle.
And even witnessing that, I remained pro prostitution as a viable career choice and empowering thing for some women. Even after seeing that, one of my neighbors, we both were single moms. I would watch her kid. I never let her watch my kid because she was pretty edgy, but she came home so distressed one night because she was working in a massage parlor and some man had come in and raped them all with a gun, like stuck a gun in their vaginas. She experienced that at work and went back to work 3 days later.
Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I always just had an inherent disgust around the whole thing. Mm-hmm. That again, I tried to push aside and reject in favor of a more third wave, open-minded, left-wing narrative, and it just didn't work. But I mean, I slept around a lot when I was younger. I never engaged in porny sex. Like I never did. I could never do it, like mm-hmm. I don't know why I was born with this prudish, I don't know. Like I wasn't interested in, like getting, Brazilian bikini waxes and pretending that I enjoyed anal sex and having threesomes and, I feel like I was always a little bit selfish, I think. In a way.
Yeah.
So I just didn't want to do things that I didn't want to do, I guess, luckily. But yeah, it all never sat right for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's a healthy perspective. Like I said, I think the reason it was attractive to me was coming from a place of having had my sexual boundaries violated in puberty, mm-hmm. And the fallout from that. And I think a lot of women in prostitution aren't the majority of them childhood sexual abuse survivors?
I think so. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know that I've ever I don't think I've ever talked to a woman in prostitution for certain who wasn't sexually abused and molested mm-hmm. as a minor.
Right.
In one way or another, or, had trauma.
Yeah. Which makes me wonder what really is going on with Lily Phillips. What's wrong with her? There's something wrong with her that she's doing this.
It's obviously not normal. And mm-hmm. it's strange that she won't acknowledge that it's not normal. It's definitely strange that she's doing this and that I know. I want to know what happened to her.
What do you think? What do you think about her marketing herself as this girl next door? She said, I dress modestly. I loved what she said of, I do my makeup in a natural style. And I thought that was really fascinating. But that she wants to
men love that.
The girl next door.
Because it's accessible to them. It makes them think that, maybe she's somebody that they could get. She's not this out of reach, like porn star who's, got tons of plastic surgery and, maybe would only want to date some, I don't know what they think, some like rich football player or something like that. I don't think that football players want to date porn stars, are there necessarily? But
no
you know,
one wants
she's
to
just a
date porn
regular
stars.
girl. Maybe that kind of girl really would have sex with you, this creepy, disgusting, nobody random man.
I guess so. I feel like the sexed up porn star with the plastic breasts and the, you know, the lip fillers and the porn star outfit is literally making herself look more accessible. Like that looks like a woman you can purchase. That's like she is gettable that way because she's dressing as though she's
well, you could
selling
pay
sex.
her, but I don't think she would sleep with you voluntarily. I think they are telling themselves that maybe Lily Phillips is the kind of girl that maybe would sleep with them voluntarily.
I guess.
I mean, they're paying, but
yeah, I don't think she's old enough or sophisticated enough to be thinking that through, but it's a really interesting way of marketing herself. And do you think she's smart enough to have cultivated that as her brand on purpose?
I don't think she's smart, but I also don't think that it takes a lot of intelligence to be a good business person per se. I know that's a popular narrative these days, but I don't think that people who are good in business are necessarily smart.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
They're good at making money, but it just makes you kind of greedy and unethical.
Yeah, she's cunning. I think she's cunning. I don't think she's intellectually very smart.
I mean, she probably knows how to manipulate men in a certain way, maybe.
What did you think about the difference in how Francis and Constantine treated her versus their interview with Ayla?
I'm trying to. Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt myself for a second because I just want to say, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And if you want to ask a question, use the super chat. I'm seeing some people ask questions or saying, can you talk about, but I can't keep track of everything there. So if you want to get our attention, please use the super chat. I'm trying to remember. I mean, it was so long ago now that I listened to their interview with Ayala, but I mean, I think they really felt bad and concerned for Lily Phillips in a way that they didn't feel bad for and concerned about ALS. So probably on some level, I don't want to misinterpret because again, I can't remember it clearly enough to know exactly all that happened during that interview, but I think they probably did see her as more of a, you know, she's making a choice and this is fine with her kind of thing. Like they obviously don't think that what Lily Phillips is doing is fine and they think it's going to traumatize her and ruin her life. You know, who's going to want to marry her? Like really, like, okay, that's shaming. But come on. Yeah. Like what man wants to marry a woman who has all of this content all over the internet?
I think that
clearly Trump.
They were coming from more of like a parental place or even a paternalistic place with Lily Phillips. I didn't feel that either of them viewed her as a potential sex partner on any kind of level. I think Ayala has a higher IQ than Lily Phillips, and I think that she was a lot better at manipulating the situation. And I think that her sexual banter with them was throwing them off. I think she had the upper hand a couple of times with the way she was sexually playing the hosts.
She's much more manipulative. Like she's much more skilled at manipulating. She knows exactly what men want from her and she performs that. And they don't realize that it's a performance. They think that it's real, most men.
Well, and I'm not even sure if they think it's a real, but they're like biochemically falling for it as well. And
it seems like all men who like, you know, Lex Friedman fell for it, you know, like all these guys. I'm not picking on Francis and Constantine specifically, but I think most men buy what Ale is selling, not as a persona, but as who she really is.
And she doesn't present herself as like this girl next door innocent. She comes off as more like a sex bot.
Yeah, she's autistic and she's just different than other women. So she actually has no sensitivities or emotions around sex like, you know, normal women do, which is very convenient for men who don't want to think about the consequences of what they're doing or don't want to have to be accountable to women that they're sleeping with, because what a lot of men want, especially younger men or whatever, you know, narcissistic men for sure, want is to be able to sleep around with zero accountability and zero consequences. And that also is tied into guilt-free. Like they don't have to feel bad that they hurt this chick's feelings because they had sex with her and then didn't return their call or didn't want to see them again. You know, that's sort of an ideal world for a lot of men, which is not to say that men don't want relationships and love and connection and to settle down, but they also want to be able to sleep around with lots of women without having to think about it ever again.
I think Ayala is a little higher class too. Like she's classier, where that's such a crazy thing to say, but she would never let herself be lying in a room that like was stinking of semen and had used condoms all over the floor and just, you know, like a filthy mattress. Like that's not her brand.
Right.
And that piece of the Lily Philips story of just that image of this disgusting room, they're not even changing the sheets on this bed. It's just this, it's so gross. It's like a torture scene.
Burned that room.
Yeah. It's just, it's repulsive. I don't even have, it's ineffably repulsive. There's no word for how gross that is. And that she is too naive to even understand how repulsive that is, that she has degraded herself to that. Like she's just garbage. Like she's just another piece of refuse who's been discarded by 100 men in a filthy, stench-ridden room with a cum-soaked sheet on a mattress, rubbing her red eyes because guys have been, and what did she say? Bukkake is good for your skin. Like her brand is trashier, even though she's trying to show herself as the girl next door. Where Ella is, you know, she's a high class prostitute. You can sign up.
She's an intellectual.
She's an intellectual.
She's
an
intellectual conversation with you before she.
Yeah.
I don't know, does whatever she does with
and you have to go through a vetting process to get to fuck her at her birthday gangbang. You don't just line up.
Can't just be any guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, this girl is gonna be such a mess and just gonna regret all this for the rest of her life, and she doesn't see it, and it's sad, and it's strange that her parents haven't informed her of this, and that her mother her mother does her like accounting for her, some admin stuff, and that came up during the interview too, because a lot of people were really critical of that because they were like, her mother's her manager, like what the hell is wrong with her mother? And she was like, oh no, it's not like that, I just want to clarify, you know, she was helping me with my like accounting essentially, and it's like, with my taxes, and it's like,
they hired an accountant, not your mom.
Why are you paying your mom? You're still paying your mom to work for you, and your work is pornography. So that's pretty weird. And you'd think that, you know, your parents would not accept this and tell you that what you're doing is really dangerous and harmful and so on and so forth.
What did you think of Francis continually referencing his friend who's a prostitute?
Well, I didn't know who he was talking about.
I think
it was like a mutual, like, sex worker friend.
Do you think it's Ayala?
No, but maybe I'm wrong. But I don't know who it would have been. I mean, I think they probably had more. They've had more than one, I think, porn star or sex worker on the podcast. I mean, I don't know, like, I don't think there's anything wrong per se with being friends with people who do this kind of thing. I'm sure I don't think that person would be like my best friend, but I don't think I'd be mean to them or not friendly to them. I mean, there's so many girls nowadays who are on OnlyFans, and, you know, I don't know. I mean, the truth is that, you know, I don't want to judge a relationship that I know nothing about, like this friendship or whatever. I don't know who it is, and you know, like, I like both those guys.
That person. Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that he kept referencing that. Like,
well, maybe so that she didn't feel bad. You know, maybe so that she wasn't, you know, they were trying to make her comfortable so that she'd open up and be honest, right? They didn't want her to feel judged or shamed or attacked, which was hard because obviously they were judging what she was doing. So maybe he's saying that to be like, you know, like, I'm not judgmental of you because you're in porn, but I'm asking you these questions because, you know, what you're doing is disturbing and upsetting, and maybe you should think about that a bit. And you know, they're asking questions that they think their audience might want to hear the answers to. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that was part of trying to make her feel more comfortable and open up a bit.
I can see that. It sounded at the beginning of the interview that she had requested the interview.
Well, yeah, she was like, "This will be good for my business," and I was just like, "I don't think so,
she
babe."
reached out to them.
Like she thought that she could go on and just like, and when they asked her why she wanted to come on their podcast, to me anyway, I thought it sounded clear that she'd never actually listened to the podcast. She was like, "Oh, you know, it's different, and I think you guys ask good questions," but I don't really think she knew what she was getting into, because they're good viewers. Like they'll do difficult interviews like a lot, but you know, she thought of it as a marketing opportunity because she thought she was going to get to go on and just provide her stupid little talking points over and over and over and over. I don't think she anticipated being pushed so much and then ending up looking like she's a horrible interview and a liar.
Yeah. I thought it was so disgusting at the end when they asked her, you know, they always ask that question, what's the one thing we should be talking about more? And that she said that bukkake is good for your skin. It's so like, that's what she said.
God.
So disgusting that she's just shilling the porn industry like that, the prostitution industry. And she's so superficial. Is that like, I just don't think there's much there to her.
No, she's really, really dumb.
But again, we saw the documentary. We saw how devastated she was at the end of that day.
Yeah, and she says she's like, well, I didn't like the documentary because it didn't represent the day accurately. And it's like, no, it didn't represent the day in the way that you want your clients and your audience to see the day represented. Did represent the day accurately because that's a real thing that happened.
Right. I wonder how she wanted it to be. And she
wanted it to seem fine, and that she had a fine time and everything was fine and good. And what a fun day.
And were they filming every single guy who came in to just stick his dick in her? Was that also happening for her OnlyFans channel? Like, was all of that being live streamed at the same time?
She was filming it for her OnlyFans channel. I doubt the documentary makers were filming the whole thing because they wouldn't have been able to or wanted to. I don't think they would have felt like that was an ethical thing to do, to be honest.
But she was filming it. The whole thing was also being filmed.
Yeah, she didn't live stream it, but she filmed the whole thing to put on her OnlyFans channel for pay.
Yeah. She was a mess. Like, she was crying and saying she wouldn't recommend it. It's, you know, it's not for the, she said it's not for the weak or something. Like, she didn't think most girls could handle it. And was literally crying.
Yeah. Just another hard day at the office. Yeah. Somebody in the comments says, can you talk about how to strike a balance between pro women doing what they want without any restriction or societal shaming, and at the same time emphasize the need for traditional values?
I don't think we're pro any human doing what they want without any restrictions, right?
No. I mean, the restrictions, like, people think about restrictions in terms of, I mean, it's the question doesn't make a lot of sense, because a lot of people ask me questions like that or say, oh, well, why are you trying to stop women from doing what they want? And I'm like, I'm not trying to stop women from doing anything they want. You know, women can do whatever they want, but, you know, I think that there should be laws against abuse and exploitation and selling human bodies and selling access to human bodies. And also, like, I think that the reality is that so many of these questions aren't just about laws, despite the fact that I think that there should be laws limiting, laws against prostitution to curb demand and, again, exploitation and trafficking and abuse and so on and so forth. Social norms is a huge part of what dictates what people do and don't do and feel okay about doing and not doing. And the social norms around pornography and prostitution have changed so much. And so, the question is never about women doing what they want to do. It's, for me, it's, again, what's normalized and, what men are doing to these women and why these women are doing it. And like, the fact that people are paying for this, that there's incentive to do this, and the fact that it's so destructive in so many different ways, on an individual level, to the woman or girl or whoever that it's happening to the men who are watching it, to the kids who are seeing it. Like, I think most kids now are seeing pornography at like 11 or something like that, which is, that's trauma. Mm-hmm. If I saw pornography when I was 11, I would have been traumatized.
Right. And that's what people think sex is. And I think that's driving so much of the destruction of healthy sexuality, as well as driving so many adolescent girls to not want to be female. I think that's an interesting question.
And traditional values, I don't know. I mean, traditional balance, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that I'm a very traditional person. And yet, again, I've never bought into or promoted or participated in anything like this. And I don't do things that I don't want to do in bed or with men. And I think I have a pretty healthy body image and a healthy sexuality, but I'm not traditional. Like, I'm not married, I don't think that women need to, be virginal. I do think that, I guess this ties into the body count question again, which is constantly coming up online, which is like, men want to make it about like, oh, men don't want to be with a girl with a high body count. But I think, first of all, that's not like a normal conversation that happens in real life. Like, nobody's ever asked me, I don't think, how many people. I would never hook up with a man and ask him how many women he'd slept with ever. Like, I don't want to know, first of all. Like, I don't want to think about how many women my boyfriend is. I don't want to think about him being with other women. Why would I want that information in my head, Yeah. Like, obviously nobody wants to be with somebody with no standards who slept around a lot. I think that part is true. Because to me, it's sort of insulting to me. Like, you want to be with somebody who's picky because they chose you. You don't want to be with somebody who would just sleep with whoever.
Yeah.
Because then what are you? Nothing. Nobody. You could be her. You could be interchangeable. But it's not a normal thing for a person to ask the number of people you've slept with before. But, I think, but yeah, at the same, I think sleeping around a lot is bad for a variety of reasons, especially for women, because I think that is dangerous emotionally. Because, women are designed to bond and catch feelings, as it were. And so I think that it's a great recipe for heartbreak and feeling like you're being disrespected and treating like garbage. And I think that's why you shouldn't sleep around. And, also dangerous because you shouldn't sleep with strangers and people that you don't know and kind of trust on some level. It's not sexually satisfying to sleep around and have a bunch of one-night stands for women.
Yeah, most women find it, distressing and dissatisfying and not a happy thing. It's just an interesting question. Like, why does everything have to be framed that way? We'll read the question one more time. Can you
Oh, I've lost it, but let me find it again. Hold on a sec here. Oh, Lord. Could you talk about how to strike a balance between pro-women? There's words missing in here, but I think you get the gist. Balance between pro-woman doing what they want without any restriction or societal shaming, and at the same time emphasize the need for traditional values. I don't know. Women can do what they want to do, but they should be realistic about how their bodies work and about how life works, and protect their, self-respect, and protect their bodies, and protect, their level of, their value of themselves, and not allow themselves to be treated as discardable garbage by men who don't care about them. And protect your emotions, like protect yourself from, you can't protect yourself from heartbreak, but you can protect yourself from feeling like used and abused and discarded on a certain level by not just sleeping with men you don't know and who don't care about and respect you.
I think that people are allowed to have strong opinions about the way people should be behaving, and that shouldn't be interpreted as those people thinking that that certain behaviors should be outlawed or like completely disallowed. There will always be shaming. People will always be judgmental and discerning about what they believe is right and wrong. What we've witnessed is that, the way you got rid of sexual shaming in liberal society was to start shaming people who expressed discernment about it, who expressed disapproval of things like, all the fetishes and people performing their fetishes in public. Like, people were shamed for kink shaming, right? Like, that was the flip of it. That, you like, that was the new shame of,
I was called a whorephobe, and I was called a prude, and I was called a pearl clutcher, and I was called a white feminist, and like Victorian, like those were all the things that we were shamed for.
Right, you were shamed.
We were critical of all this stuff.
You were shamed for all of that, and I think that's so fascinating that kind of shame is now in vogue in liberal society, and it's just another form of shaming. I think, being realistic, that there were valid reasons for women in particular to have very negative feelings against women who were prostituting. Like, they were before antibiotics, they were spreading diseases. There's still a lot of disease being spread that way. There's this very misguided notion that testing is 100% protective against STDs. There's not a single STD test that's 100% accurate. And if you're having sex with 100 guys, chances are, even if you've tested all of them for chlamydia and gonorrhea, one or two of them still have it, because there's a false negative rate on that test. And so if men in the community are lining up to have sex with this woman who's very likely to have diseases, and those men are then going to go out and give those diseases to their wives and their girlfriends, the wives and the girlfriends have good cause, a good reason to be upset with the woman who's doing that.
Yeah. Sorry, your video is freezing up a little bit in your audio there, but hopefully it comes back. So I didn't totally catch that all. But I think, of course. I mean, if your husband's out sleeping with prostitutes and bringing home venereal diseases, then you're going to be mad about prostitution for sure.
Yes.
And, it's hard to blame women in prostitution because most of them are so traumatized and victimized and don't have a way out, and so on and so forth. But it's easy to blame women in prostitution when they do have a way out and they do have a choice, and they're choosing it and they're promoting it as something good and harmless and empowering, like people like Ayala do, like, I don't have any respect for that. I don't have any respect for you promoting OnlyFans as a great way to make money.
No. And one thing I really disagreed with Constantine and Francis on that was that they said there's no pimping going on in OnlyFans, and that's not true at all. There are plenty being trafficked on that site. I also really didn't like it. And they did admit that, they got her point, and they admitted they were wrong, but comparing her to Andrew Tate, I think, was a completely unfair comparison.
Yeah, that didn't really make much sense, I guess, because she has no power in this world as far as I'm concerned, and this is an abusive man who is exploiting a ton of women. Like, I don't think that Lily's exploiting anybody. I mean, she's making money off these losers, but she's going to pay for it big time. She's paying for it,
And she's not choking them on camera and, abusing them on camera. And she's not forcing them to have sex with other women for her financial gain. There's no comparison to her between her and a pimp. Like, she's selling herself, and there are good critiques of that. Andrew Tate was trafficking women.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and there's trafficking that happens on OnlyFans, and I think a lot of people don't realize that, because I think a lot of people think, oh, well, the good thing about OnlyFans is at least, like, it's all these women who are in control of what they're doing and their own content. And in a lot of cases, that's true. But, OnlyFans, first of all, is acting like a pimp in this situation, because they're profiting from these women. For the most women on there making more than $100 a month, and OnlyFans is profiting. And they're profiting from the promotion that these women are doing in an attempt to promote their channels, because what you have to do, this is, I can't remember if she was talking about this in this interview, or if I read this somewhere else, or I was listening to some other interview about OnlyFans, but there's no algorithm in OnlyFans. So it's not like you're being exposed to different, and you're like, oh, that girl looks interesting, I'm going to go to her channel. You have to do all your own self-promotion, which means that you're using other social media platforms, which is, of course, why Instagram is full of pornography, because all these OnlyFans chicks are on Instagram trying to get men, posting kind of porny photos that aren't literally pornographic. So when I tell men, like, this is pornography, and they're like, it's not pornography. I'm like, but it is. First of all, these are totally porny photos, and she's trying to draw you into her porn channel on OnlyFans, right?
She's just doing yoga.
Right. Yeah. Like, what's wrong with posting a picture of your ass on Instagram? Like, but that's all. You have to really work a lot. Like, it's quite a bit of work to do your own self-promotion on social media to get men to come to your channel and to subscribe and to keep coming to your channel, and so on and so forth. So the vast majority of women on there are not making very much money. And, OnlyFans is benefiting from all that promotion of OnlyFans, and benefiting by making money because they're taking a cut from all these women. And then there are actual traffickers who are putting girls on OnlyFans for content, which is, at least one good reason behind Sweden's recent ban of, it wasn't a ban specifically of OnlyFans, it was a ban of any kind of live action porn, essentially, like any kind of porn where you can ask for sex acts for money on video online or whatever. It's like, the Swedish parliament just passed a new law that updates the country's existing sex purchase legislation, which is the Nordic model, for those who don't know, which criminalizes pimps, johns, brothel owners, and decriminalizes the prostituted women, and criminalizes the purchase of custom-made pornographic content. So consuming pre-made pornographic material is still legal in Sweden, but they're treating custom-made content on platforms like OnlyFans or paying for live cam shows, that's now illegal and punishable as a crime akin to prostitution, which I love, because I've long been saying that pornography is just prostitution that's filmed.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you're paying for sex acts in OnlyFans and these kinds of live cam online scenarios. You're exchanging money for sex acts, and you're not penetrating her. You're still, maybe you're paying somebody else to penetrate her or penetrate herself or whatever it is you're doing. You're still paying for sex acts. It's prostitution.
Right.
So I think that's great. And I also just read, actually, I didn't realize this, you may have, but I did not, that recently, Republican Utah Senator Mike Lee and Illinois Rep. Mary Miller reintroduced the Interstate Obscenity Definition Act, which would redefine what's considered as obscene material. So obscenity, because people always defend pornography by being like, First Amendment free speech. And I'll say, it's not speech. And they're like, well, it is in the law. And I was like, but it's not. We all know it's not speech.
Right,
it's
right.
Sex acts. They're real human beings having sex for money. It's not speech, but okay. Glad that makes me feel better. But so obscenity isn't protected by the First Amendment. Freedom of speech is. So this is their big loophole, I guess. Obscenity is still outside the bounds of the First Amendment, explained Mike Stabil. I don't know how to say his name. Director of Public Policy at Adult Industry Trade Organization, the Free Speech Coalition. This is like a sex industry lobby group. You cannot distribute it. You can't sell it. You can't post it online. It is something you can be prosecuted for. So in U.S. law, obscenity is currently determined by the Miller test, a 3-part test introduced after the 1973 Supreme Court case Miller versus California. So 1, whether the average person applying contemporary community standards would find that work taken as a whole appeals to prurient, i.e. shameful or morbid sexual interest. 2, whether the work depicts or describes in a patently offensive way sexual content specifically defined by the applicable state law. And 3, whether the work taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. So this bill that they've reintroduced would redefine obscene material as visual media that, taken as a whole, appeals to the prurient interest in nudity, sex, or excretion, to depicts, describes or represents an actual or simulated sexual act or sexual contact, actual or simulated normal or perverted sexual acts, or lewd exhibition of the genitals with the objective intent to arouse, titillate, or gratify the sexual desires of a person. Sounds like they're just defining pornography here, which is great. And 3, taken as a whole, lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. So they're removing the community standard requirement, and that's part of what they're doing, because I mean, what's the community standard of the internet? Obviously, lots of people like and think porn is great. So obviously, if you're like, what do you guys think? Like 1 billion people are going to be like, we love it. We love gangbangs. It's all good.
Gangbangs are art.
She looks like she's having fun.
Well, and Lily Philips did say what she's doing is making art. Yeah. I should probably wind down. I gotta leave tomorrow for the Midwest Women's Herbal Conference. So.
Oh goodness, where's that?
It is in Wisconsin, in Almond, Wisconsin, and it's a all-women herb conference. It's gonna be a blast. I'm really excited about it.
Cool, that sounds awesome. Alrighty then. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Tell us what you think in the comments about body counts and OnlyFans and obscenity. If you are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We're here every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And you can find me on Substack at meganmurphy.ca. You can find Mary Lou on Substack at Mary Lou Singleton or at enchantedfamilymedicine.com. I am on Twitter all the time. I'm sorry, at Megan E. Murphy, and I've forgotten what Mary Lou's handle is after
I always forget,
months of remembering. ML_Singleton?
I think that's me, yeah. I'm not super active on Twitter.
Okay. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Good to see you, Mary Lou. Welcome back.
You too. Thanks. Good to see you too.
Okay. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.